Welcome to the Close Encounter Club. I'm your host, Justin Gearhart. Today's story begins with a sound. Not a voice, not a knock, but the deep, steady rhythm of something breathing outside of a second-story window. Jennifer had been living with chronic back pain for years. Then one night, after that sound, her pain vanished completely. In this episode, we're doing something that we've never done before. Jennifer has given us permission to share part of her medical history, including documentation of years of spinal pain and treatments. And you'll also hear a brief clip of one of her QHHT sessions, which is short for Quantum Healing Hypnosis Technique. It's a form of deep hypnosis developed by Dolores that aims to access the subconscious or the higher self. And it's not just for insight, it's for healing. In that state, Jennifer recalled an extraterrestrial race called the Arcturians that essentially watched her, healed her, and then returned her. And of course, you're also going to hear from Scully, our AI researcher, as we try to explore what actually happened, scientifically, psychologically, or something else entirely. This story doesn't just raise questions about contact. It raises questions about healing and where healing might actually come from. So, let's get into it. This is episode 15, The Breathing, and welcome to the Close Encounter Club.
My name is Jennifer Jones. I live in Knoxville, Tennessee. I'm a mother to two boys who are nearly 16 and 5. My background, I was a certified pharmacy tech for 18 years and switched over to the oral surgery and ended up in gastroenterology as a medical assistant, which I loved. I did that for about 5-6 years, and 3 years ago, the cost of daycare here in the States got so tremendous that I made the decision to pull my son out of daycare, and I've been staying at home with him for the past 3 years. He goes to kindergarten in the fall, and I'm really looking forward to where this new phase of life for me takes me. And I believe that, it's gone in a direction I never thought possible. I've always been interested and have been drawn naturally to anything pertaining to the supernatural. 2012 was a pivotal time for me, and I've had moments along the way. Looking back, I'm like, whoa, that was an awakening milestone. That was an awakening milestone. But the biggest one for me happened this past year in 2024, around the end of May, June, when I experienced something that totally rocked my world, that affected my physical, mental, emotional, spiritual bodies, that healed me, that just really propelled my ascension journey way off into the far reaches of the universe. And it's been a wild ride. I started having lower back pain in probably, 2005.
Oh, wow. That's a long time.
Yeah. And it was in my lumbar area, just straight across my back, and it would come and go. I always just kind of figured it was, I need a new mattress, I need better shoes. But in 2019, it got worse. It suddenly got worse. And I had my youngest child in April of 2020. And before I got pregnant with him, it started. So I know that it wasn't, I think it probably didn't help it, but I had it long before he ever decided to incarnate into my family. So it was about 2018, 2019 when the lumbar pain got worse. Suddenly I had right hip pain, right lower back pain that kind of shifted over more towards the side of my body, and it eventually spread down my leg. I told my doctor about it after Ben was born. He said, it'll clear up. Well, it didn't. It got worse. January to May, June 2024, the pain was so bad And having a pharmacy and medical background, I thought I understood what severe chronic pain was until I had it myself and it got so bad that I considered suicide. I had been referred to neurosurgery and had 2 or 3 appointments with a local neurologist. And I had a series of MRIs over, I believe, 3 consecutive years. And I had been on every medication except opiates. I refused any kind of opioids. I had back injections. And during that time, it was discovered that not only did I have spinal bifida occulta, which I had no clue, I was missing a little joint somewhere down in the lumbar, that I had slight scoliosis, but that I also had a synovial cyst between L3 and 4, L4 and 5, I can't remember which. But the position of this cyst was such that they could not chew it with any kind of a needle in order to maybe relieve it. And they thought, well, it could be pressing on a nerve, and that's why you're having leg pain, which at times, more times than not, during the early part of 2024 was a 10. It was off the charts. And it shot down my leg. There were some mornings, and I have ADHD, and I'm always on the go. I can't sit still. I don't like to lay around. Got a young child in the house, and laying in bed is not anything I've ever done. There were mornings I couldn't move. To get out of the bed. I would take 800 milligrams ibuprofen, wait for that to kick in order to be able just to sit up on my own without anybody's help. It was bad. And I've, never been suicidal, but nothing was working. And I thought, if this is how life is going to be for me, there's no quality of life. And I have known patients who have committed suicide because the pain level was just beyond the beyonds, and I got to that point.
Yeah.
And I prayed. I was raised Christian, became Roman Catholic, was even a former nun for a time, and I have since left the Christian faith. I'm agnostic. I know there's a higher source. I know that, and I call him God, universe source. There's something that created us. And I prayed. To whoever would listen to relieve me of the pain. And this brings me up to May of last year, when everything changed.
Before we go into Jennifer's experience, Scully, I want to ask you to review her medical records and give us a detailed report.
Sure, I'll give you a detailed summary of what's in Jennifer's medical records based on the information available. Here's a breakdown of the key details. 1, chief complaints and diagnosis. Jennifer has a history of lumbar radiculopathy and lumbago without sciatica, with back pain that radiates to her right leg. She described the pain as progressively worsening since early 2021. She tried various treatments, including injections, medications like prednisone, ibuprofen, and pregabalin, but reported only minimal relief. Physical therapy was suggested, but she found it difficult to schedule due to her responsibilities at home. Imaging of her lumbar spine showed a synovial cyst at the L5S1 level, causing nerve root impingement. Surgery was discussed as a possible option, including a potential fusion, but it appears she hadn't undergone surgery yet. The pain significantly affected her daily activities, including lifting her baby and performing household tasks. There were no red flags like fever, unexplained weight loss, or incontinence, and her neurological exams were mostly normal aside from some sensory changes. Jennifer also reported anxiety and depression, which she believed were exacerbated by the chronic pain. This gives a solid foundation to compare with Jennifer's experience of sudden healing and the transformation she described. Let me know what specific aspects you want to dive deeper into.
Yeah, we're not quite there yet. I want to hear Jennifer's story, but would you consider the medical records that Jennifer shared with us to be severe and chronic?
Based on the medical records, Jennifer's condition does appear to be chronic and significantly impactful on her daily life. She had been experiencing back pain for several years with worsening symptoms over time. The records mention conditions like lumbar radiculopathy and a synovial cyst at the L5S1 level, causing nerve root impingement. She also tried multiple treatments and interventions with limited relief, which underscores the chronic nature of her pain. So yes, her condition can definitely be considered both severe and chronic.
All right, thanks. Let's get back to the episode now. So right before you had this experience, what was your belief system? I know you mentioned you were kind of raised in a way that was more spiritual. At this time, I know you said you were praying and things like that, but where were you from a spiritual belief system?
That is something that's been constantly evolving, although I didn't realize it at the time. But let me say really quick that in 2022, that was my last time I went to the neurologist, and they're like, okay, the only thing that will help you is to have a certain back surgery. Tiger Woods, it's one that he had, where a vascular surgeon is involved, along with orthopedic and a neurosurgeon. They go in through your abdomen. They're going to put a cage in between L3 and L4. And, we're talking a very long, dangerous surgery, and that would require I not lift anything over 30 pounds. It was probably actually a lot less weight than that. But I'm like, I have a 2-year-old. I can't not pick up my child, for 6 to 9 months, I believe is what I was told. And I would have to quit work, and we relied upon my income for insurance, health insurance, childcare. So, and because opiates were not an option for me, my primary care was going to send me to a pain clinic. He's like, we've tried probably 8 different, non-controlled substances. Well, a couple of them were controlled because they were, things for neuropathy pain. But once I met with a neurologist and knew what I was facing in order to have any kind of quality of life, that's no guarantee it's going to help. There's no guarantee you're not going to have another back surgery. I've known plenty of people in my life who have had multiple. So I'm like, I pretty much gave up. I was baptized as an infant into the Lutheran church, raised here in the good old South as a Southern Baptist. I went to college in Ireland, and that really became my introduction to Roman Catholicism. I converted after being in Ireland 3 years. In 2004, ended up becoming a nun, a sister within the Dominican order. I was on a search for the truth. Didn't know it at the time, but after I left the convent, I realized it wasn't for me. I'm like, okay, so what is the truth? Who is God? Is God Jesus? Is Jesus God? I started to ask some questions that in the past I'd always taken for granted. This is what you believe, and, this is why we're here. Why are we on earth? To love and serve the Lord our God. I just accepted it blindly. But in 2012, I was actually working for the Diocese of Knoxville. I started to ask some deeper questions at the time that I was experiencing the pain, and as we edged closer to 2024 and it got so freaking intense, I asked myself, okay, what's real? Am I really experiencing this pain? Is this something that I'm imagining? Are my doctors telling me the truth? I've prayed to God. I've prayed to Jesus. I've prayed to the saints. I've prayed. Literally, I would look up and say to anybody who is of the light, if anybody's listening, please help me. So I was at a point where I felt such despair over having so much pain. I was ready to just say, screw it. Nothing exists. We're here. We die. That's it. There's nothing more. I've been watching Gaia. It's a network, a streaming service, and it's, everything from the supernatural, metaphysical, UFO disclosure, transcendental meditation, anything of a spiritual nature. I started watching programs there, and had run across a program where a woman claimed to have been abducted by what I call the tall grays. There are the little grays and the tall grays. These in particular were believed to be from Zeta Reticuli. And she claimed that she'd been abducted. She had, an abduction experience, but she claimed that they healed her. And around the same time, I became introduced to Dolores Cannon, who was a hypnotist in the 60s. She founded QHHT. Started reading her books, which were transcripts of QHHT sessions she'd done with patients, with their approval, of course. The more I read and the more I watched on YouTube, on Gaia, through the QHHT website, I'm like, well, a lot of these alien races that I have contact with, they're healing people. I decided to book a QHHT session with a level 3 practitioner in Nashville, just a couple hours away from where I live. And she had a 6-month waiting list. And I had that QHHT session in January of this year. During that time, I started researching QHHT and recruited myself to become a student. And I passed my level 1 exam, and I'm now a level 1 intern. But May of last year, after reading Dolores and watching Gaia and realizing, hey, these ETs are actually helping some people, I stood in what is now my youngest son's bedroom, their house on the 2nd floor, and it was a night I was having so much pain, physical pain. And I actually looked up and spoke, said, hey, gray aliens. And at that time, I did not know that there were negative grays and positive grays, but there are. I believe there are. I said, look, I know that you've healed people. Please help me, heal me. I'm reaching out to you because I have nobody. I have no other way. I get emotional talking about it. Just the feeling of despair you get when you reach that point that you're praying to gray aliens. I mean, come on. And at this point, I believe in aliens, in UFOs, in other races. I've never seen anything that I recall. I know they're there, just like I know God is there. But when you reach that point that you're praying to something that may or may not exist, that you don't know is negative or positive, that you don't know the outcome or what you're intentionally or unintentionally conjuring up, to me, that's rock bottom. Fighting off the thought of, do I need to take my own life, is one thing, but when you reach the point that you're asking aliens for help, that's a whole other thing.
Yeah. I think a lot of people have been at that rock bottom place. I know I have before. I can see you there, like in your son's, in that room, just like pleading, like, please, like, and anything. I mean, I can, my heart goes out to you for that, because that's.
Modern medicine couldn't do anything. Yeah, I could have neurosurgery, but I would probably have made my life worse. Praying to everything, like nothing was working. So I reached out to the Grays. 3 to 5 days later, my son and I was trying to help him transition into his bedroom. So I began sleeping in his room with him to try to make that transition easier. And both my children and I are natural night owls. We come to life at night. And, for me especially, having a child at home all day, every day, not having adult conversation with anybody, I would stay up all night just to get alone and to clear my head and to think and kind of, keep a hold of myself. And but this one particular night, this was in late May, early June of last year. I think it was a Friday night, 2:00 in the morning. I had my earbuds in, listening to a podcast. He was next to me on his iPad. And we keep a fan, a little fan we sit on, a tabletop fan, going at night. It's 12 months a year. It was set on medium. And it's not a quiet fan, but it's not a loud fan. But if it were on and you were outside the room, it would drown out any conversation. So not just the fan, but the fact that he was mentally engaged in listening to whatever it was on YouTube Kids. I was in a podcast playing a game. What happened next opened both sides of my brain to a degree that I didn't think was possible. Ben and I were sitting there, and again, it was 2 o'clock in the morning, and I heard a noise. It sounded initially like a mechanical noise, and thought, what the hell is that? It wasn't coming from the fan. It wasn't coming from the AC, air conditioner. I took my earbuds out, and I sat, and it stopped. And a few seconds later, I heard it again, and Ben looked over at me. He said, Mommy, what's making that noise? And I knew it was something. And I hesitated, and I said, Ben, I don't hear anything. He's like, you hear something too. He knew I heard it. I said, it's just the fan. And he looked at me, and he's very intuitive. He said, no, it's not. I said, well, Ben, I think it is. Just don't worry about it. Let me pause here and tell you what it sounded like to me. It's so hard to put into words. I don't know that I have been programmed with the correct English vocabulary to explain what it sounded like. But the closest I can get is it sounded like something massive and organic, yet mechanical breathing. Ben and I've taught him to do some breath work. And so, like we'll do a inhale for 4 seconds, hold it for 4, and then exhale for 4. And I timed it in my head. This breathing, it seemed to take an inhalation of 6 or 7 seconds, pause for the same, and then you could hear it expelling air. It was like... And when I say the noise was loud, it wasn't just loud, like a rock concert loud. It was bigger. It's like we heard it and felt it in every cell in our body, in our organs, and it just encompassed the room.
Was there vibrations too? Like, was it vibrating like when a big plane flies overhead and it kind of like rumbles the house a little bit? Did it have that effect a little bit as well?
No, it was, no. I'm sure our body experienced vibrations, but it was on such a small cellular, molecular, even atomic level that I don't think we were necessarily aware. Now, if I heard it again, and I have prayed that I do, I haven't since that time, but if I were to hear it again, then I would listen with a lot more than just my ears, because I'd love to experience it again now that I know what it was. But there is around about an 8-inch vent in the ceiling, about 2 feet away from the bedroom window. It seemed to be coming from the window.
The sound was coming from the window?
Yes and no. I sensed intuitively that whatever was making the noise was at the window. Got it. Okay. But it just filled the room. It filled everything. And I wasn't afraid. I wasn't fearful, but I was like, what? I was mesmerized. It was truly mesmerizing. I'm like, what is this? Turned the fan off, sat on the edge of the bed. The window that I was drawn to is maybe 3 to 4 feet from the edge of the bed. And I listened. And Ben joined me, and we sat staring at the window as though we were watching a television program, and we would hear the breath. And I was counting. So 6 or 7 seconds, then it would stop for 6 or 7 seconds, and then it would exhale. It was something breathing. After about 15, 20 minutes of listening to this, and it didn't dawn on me at this point to grab my cell phone and record. I was just too, I don't want to say I was in a state of spiritual rapture, but I think that when the sound stopped, I was nearly there.
So when you looked out the window with your son, did you see anything, or was it just the night sky? Or
No, I looked out the window and we're on the second floor and didn't see a thing. At the moment I looked out the window, it was not breathing. That I guess it was silent. But the minute I sit down, it exhaled. I saw fear in Ben's face. He said, "Mama, go get Daddy." And my husband doesn't believe in anything. If the Titanic were to suddenly appear in the living room and the entire city of Knoxville saw it, he'd be like, "There's nothing there."
wow.
Call it cognitive dissonance or a few other things. I knew that it wouldn't matter or maybe even register to his ears. But anyway, I went in, woke him up. This was around 2:20 a.m. "Ryan, get up. You need to hear this noise." And he's like, "What?" I'm like, "You have to hear this." So he walked in, and when he got to the threshold of the bedroom, he stopped. And he's like, "What is that?" It's hard to get a reaction out of him, but this elicited a reaction in him. He said, "What's making that noise?" And I said, "I don't know." And he came, and the three of us were all standing there in front of the window, listening, just looking at each other. I do remember for a brief moment, I was just so mesmerized by this noise. That's like the last thing I want to do is, I think I was afraid that if I picked up my phone, it would stop. So we sat there another 5 minutes listening. And
Josh, does this remind you of something by chance? Because something is like ringing in my ears right now, and unfortunately Jennifer is not going to know what it is, but you and I think know. It's Clark Watson's story.
Yeah, it's very similar. There's a lot of overlap there.
That's wild. I'm like freaking out a little bit because of it.
Clark was an early episode, Jennifer, that we recorded, and very similar feeling, I guess, in his story.
really,
Very similar feeling. I don't remember him. Actually, there might have been a sound to it, but he saw a craft that he described as like an organic craft, and that he actually, if I remember correctly, he felt the same feeling you felt about the phone. Like he wanted to go get his phone, but like it was almost like a, not paralyzed because you could move, but it was this weird block.
Yeah, I think he described it as a bit of like a mental block. Like there was something, he wasn't able to like connect his brain to his hand, to his phone, and actually make the movement.
I felt fear, like I was trapped in a cage with a predator. And I thought, I have to film this. I put the camera on my phone and I went to lift my arm up to film it, and I could not physically raise my arm. I had to force and really contort my body and fight just to get my arm up.
that's it to a T.
So anyway, I'm sorry to interrupt. You were saying that Ryan, I think is your husband's name, correct? Yeah. So Ryan walked like through the threshold, and he was like, "What's that noise?" I think is where you left off.
He stopped at the threshold of the door, and I noticed a change in his energy. Like something, I didn't think he could pick up on anything, but he picked up on something. It was evident through his body language. And when he came in, we sat and just listened. And, how you just described this other gentleman, it's like, I think the left side of my brain, my logical brain said, "Hey, Jen, grab your phone." If there was something else there that's like, no. Like literally just prevented me from doing it. So at this point, it was 2:30. We'd been hearing this breathing for 30 minutes. I said, "Ryan, look out the window." He kind of looked at me. At the moment, guys, that he looked out the window, the minute that he pulled the curtain and his face out, it stopped. We sat back down waiting for it to resume, this breathing, and it didn't. I had not been sleeping with him for a couple months because his snoring has gotten so bad. I have to have silence or a fan when I sleep. And it was so, so bad. And I remember saying, Ben, I think we should sleep with Daddy tonight. And Ben can't sleep with him either because of the snoring. And it wasn't because I was afraid. I didn't feel fear at all. I didn't feel afraid. I just didn't know what it was. And I thought that for Ben's sake, it would be better to not be in the room until I could spend some time processing what we had heard and to maybe see if it would resume. So we all went into the master bedroom. An hour passed. He's like, what was that? I said, I don't know. And Ben was like, none of us slept that night, but a couple times between the time, that the noise stopped and the time the sun came up, I went back into the room by myself just to sit. And I walked in and I looked up and I said, okay, I hear you. We all hear you. I don't know what you are. I don't know what you want. Only beings of the highest light and love and vibration are welcome in this house. If you are not of the light, then you need to leave and never come back. I was very firm in this. And I said, but if you are of the light, please come back. Please show me what you are. I knew that it was something I had never experienced, and it was beyond being supernatural. The next day, I called my mother, and I said, she lives down the road. I said, I gotta come over and tell you guys what happened. Interestingly enough, she and my dad had experienced some weird sleep disturbances that same night, the night before. And she's like, something just feels off. And I told Dad everything about it, and he's like, what is this, a Stephen King movie? It's like, come on. And,
that's funny.
Yeah. So about a month later, I don't know at all if this is connected, but I live in the flight path of an airport nearby, and I am myself and my son Ben are in love with a plane called a KC-135. They refuel jets in the air. They're massive, big planes. I've been listening to them for years. I love to watch them. They have a certain sound to them. I know when one is approaching, even though you can't see it. I'm like, Ben, listen, KC-135. So it was a clear day. This was in June. There was noticeably a lack of air traffic, on a cloud in the sky, just beautiful. And we were in the backyard refilling the bird baths. We love birds. I had a watering hose in my hand, and all of a sudden I hear this noise, and Ben heard it, and he came running up to me and grabbed me around the legs, and I dropped the water hose, and we both looked up. And I'm really bad on judging feet, but suddenly, without any warning, without hearing the noise of the engines approach, it was above the neighbor's house in a tree in the backyard. It was a KC-135. It just came in out of nowhere. And the noise that it brought with it, if you kind of, this is how it felt to me. If you imagine like the actual Titanic, a massive iceberg, and the moment that the Titanic hit the iceberg and the metallic, it was a metallic noise. I've heard the landing gear come down in airplanes that were right above me. We used to watch airplanes at the airport take off in Cork, Ireland, when I lived there. I know what landing gear sounds like. This was not landing gear. It was the most horrific noise I've ever heard. I wouldn't want to hear it again. And again, it was penetrating down to the cellular level, but it sounded like the Titanic hit an iceberg or two KC-135s just crashed right above our heads, and we were both like this.
I don't mean to laugh, but that's the reaction
it's kind of humorous.
was kind of funny.
Yeah, if we'd had a camera on us, I mean, I'm sure it would have been something we would have watched over and over.
Yeah.
But it was there one minute, and it was, but the noise, it was like a ripping metallic, like a
Like metal, like twisting
loud
together, kind of, and just grinding, kind of. Yeah.
Yeah. And we sat and watched it, and as it disappeared from the point where we were standing, we ran around the side of the house to watch it fly off towards the airport, and it was gone. It was gone. The moment it left our sight, that's when the noise stopped too. And to me, my first thought as it disappeared was that just came in from another dimension into this dimension. That noise was the noise of it crossing dimensions, but it was so low. It was just so freaking low and close to us.
It reminds me a little bit too of when the Jersey drones were happening. I know a lot of people were reporting that there was like almost like a shape shifting element to it, where they would look at these things that didn't look like drones. It was almost like those like plasmoid things, and the people were looking at it, and then all of a sudden it would just just become a helicopter, and you're like, that doesn't seem like it was a helicopter, but now it is a helicopter. What the heck just happened? And it kind of seemed, that reminds me of your story a little bit too, where like nothing was there, and then all of a sudden it just like you said, it's like generated this KC-135. That's why, and the fact that it was low too is also weird, because you definitely would think you would hear that from farther away. If it was up really, really high, maybe you would say that you just didn't notice it or something, but those things are loud from my understanding.
Thinking back, the noise, it's almost, had we heard it any longer, I would have wanted to, my instinct would have been to reach up and just, it was almost like frequency, sound, war tactics. Of course, in this day, who knows, but it is not a sound that I ever want to hear again. It was very discordant. That's the perfect word. It was discordant.
Let me just take a minute just to recap here. So you were having a lot of back issues. Your back issues were getting worse. You were praying to these grays because of that show on the Gaia channel, like, please, like, last ditch effort, like, I need help. A couple of days later, you heard this really weird metallic breathing kind of sound in your bedroom, and you, your son, and your husband all heard it, and it lasted for a long time. A couple of days later, this gigantic KC-135 plane just seemed to have appeared out of nowhere, flying really low.
It was about a month later that
okay.
The KC.
Got it. Okay, a month later. I'm sorry.
Yeah, so it was within a 30-day period of these two things. Yeah.
At what point did your back issues get better? Was that a gradual process as well, or was it just like you woke up one day and you were just like, I'm fine?
The next 2 days after we heard this, nothing happened. I think that the universe, the ones who were behind this noise, I think they gave me a couple days of process. I needed to. And I think in a way I'm still processing. So I had 2 days of just chill time. Let's think about this. I don't think I slept for the next 2 days. I think it was about the third or fourth day after the breathing. We call it the breathing in our family. I guess it was day 4 after. I slept so hard. I went into a really deep sleep. I'm 46 years old. Since I was 8 years old, I have problems sleeping. I can't fall asleep, can't stay asleep. It's, just something I've always dealt with. It's become my norm, but I fell into a deep sleep. And I woke up for about 3 years daily, up until the point of the breathing. I would wake up in pain. And I guess the beginning of 2024, up until the breathing, it was a 10 every day, all day. I couldn't walk without, and I'm pretty tough. The pain was so bad it would make me cry. 4 days after the breathing, after this deep sleep, I woke up and got out of bed, walked across the room to open the curtain, the same curtain that we looked out of when we heard, same bedroom. Suddenly I'm like, oh, I have no pain. And I kind of moved my right leg around and stretched, and I'm like, I have no pain. The next day, for 2 months, maybe even actually 3 months is more accurate. I didn't tell anybody. I didn't tell my husband. I didn't tell my parents. Didn't tell my doctor. And I had seen him during that period. I was afraid that if I told somebody, it would jinx me and my pain would come back. But I mean, I went from a 10 on a pain scale of 0 to 10 to a 0. My joints, both my hip joints, especially the right, they were always real stiff and achy. And the pain that shot down my leg, which was more than sciatica, because I've had sciatica, it was more than that. I mean, everything was gone. And finally, I guess, in September, maybe October, I told my family, I'm like, I have to tell y'all something. The breathing that happened. Yeah. Well, ever since that same week, I've not had any pain. It's gone. And, they're all just like, oh, that's great. I'm like, no, I don't think you understand. It's gone. It's like, this is a chronic thing. It's been established by a neurosurgery group that you've got a degenerative joint disorder in your lumbar, spinal bifida occulta, scoliosis, a synovial cyst. There is advanced facet arthritis in certain joints in my lumbar. There's a whole list of things going on. Everything was gone. That was just the tip of the iceberg. Now, here we are, late February 2025, and I still haven't had pain. It has left the building. It has left my energy field. It's gone.
Hi, I'm Cassidy.
And I'm Amanda.
And we're the hosts of Drinking the Kool-Aid, a comedy podcast dedicated to the mysterious.
Tune in every week while we cover 2 chilling tales about everything from cults
to aliens
to the paranormal,
all with a sense of humor.
So grab a drink
and tune in to Drinking the Kool-Aid wherever you get your podcasts.
All right, Scully, I'm going to need some help with this one. So I have some family members that are very close to me that have had some serious back issues, very similar to what Jennifer is claiming to have had. And that family member had to have surgery in order to fix those issues. So what do you make of the claims of Jennifer that these back issues after the breathing just simply went away?
It's definitely a fascinating and intriguing situation. Chronic back issues, especially those involving structural problems like a synovial cyst or nerve impingement, typically require medical intervention. It's not uncommon for people with similar conditions to undergo surgery, physical therapy, or long-term pain management to find relief. Jennifer's account of the pain vanishing after the breathing experience is certainly unusual and might be viewed through a few different lenses. Chronic pain can be influenced by factors like stress, anxiety, or other psychological elements. In rare cases, a profound emotional or spiritual experience can create a dramatic shift in how pain is perceived or managed by the body. Spontaneous remission, although less common. There are documented cases where chronic conditions improve unexpectedly. Medical science may not always have a clear explanation for these occurrences. Spiritual or energetic healing. From Jennifer's perspective, the experience was tied to something beyond the physical, a kind of energetic or extraterrestrial intervention. Whether or not someone believes in that dimension, it's clear that the experience had a profound effect on her well-being. In essence, Jennifer's story is unique and compelling. While it might not follow the conventional path of medical treatment, it highlights the complexity of chronic pain and the powerful role the belief, experience, and perception can play in healing. It's definitely a conversation starter.
So there has been cases where people have eliminated this pain from back issues without any medical intervention. That is a possibility, correct?
Yes, it's definitely a possibility, though it's not common. There are documented cases where people have experienced significant improvement or even complete resolution of chronic pain without surgical or conventional medical intervention. Sometimes these cases are attributed to factors like lifestyle changes, alternative therapies, or profound psychological or emotional experiences. The mind-body connection is powerful, and in some instances, people have spontaneous remissions or improvements that aren't fully understood by medical science. So while it's not the norm, it's definitely within the realm of possibility.
Okay. And that doesn't necessarily mean extraterrestrials healed her, but I guess we'll see where this story goes.
Exactly. It's definitely one of those intriguing possibilities that makes Jennifer's story so compelling, whether it was a purely internal shift, a combination of factors, or something beyond conventional understanding. It's a fascinating journey to explore. We'll see where the story leads and what other insights come to light.
I guess maybe 2-3 weeks after the breathing, I'm not sure what it was now. I'm still learning and processing. I don't know if I went through a Kundalini awakening or what. I was still at the point clueless about what it was we had heard, clueless about why, where the pain went. I woke up one morning feeling really bad, just physically rough. My emotions were off. I just didn't feel like myself. Now, I want to point out that just 2-3 months before, maybe, I had gone for my yearly physical, did blood work, and I told my doctor, look, I'm 46. Can you see if I'm in, premenopause? Just show me where my hormone levels are. Everything was fine. I don't have a history of mental illness other than anxiety and depression and ADHD, but something was different. Guys, the best way I can explain it was it was like I was given a new set of spiritual eyes. My husband, my parents, other people that had been very impactful in my life throughout the years, I saw them from a very different perspective. Not good things, but I believe I saw the truth in them. I saw the truth in the world, the way I had been raised. I started having downloads, memories started coming in from my childhood, from my adolescence, from my 20s. These flashbacks and memories, this went on for, probably until December of this past year. And it was really like watching my life flash before my eyes. I realized that things I had been taught by my parents, by my school system, by the churches I had been involved in, it's like none of this is. I asked, is this all real? Is this the truth? Like, I spent years slowly seeking the truth, and after the breathing, after my healing, it's like, okay, you're taking too slow with this, Jen. We're going to dump it all on you, and I didn't go into a spiritual psychosis as some people do, but I think I was close to it. The past few years, I speak up about things. I don't silence myself, but after the breathing, I got a whole new voice, a whole new perspective. I didn't read a line in a book that woke me up. I thought this is connected to the breathing, to the healing. I had relied from time to time on craft beer to regulate my emotions. Never did drugs. About a week or so, around the time that I noticed my pain was gone, my taste changed. Craft beer, which my husband and I have loved and visited breweries all across the South, the smell was horrible to me. The taste was horrible. Red meat, the smell became horrible. I thought, this is hormonal. It wasn't. Still to this day, substances such as, drink or certain foods that I always enjoyed, I'm like, nope, can't do it. Whatever visited us transformed me totally in emotion, mental health, physical.
There's one thing I want to mention, because one thing I love to do with these episodes is where these experiencer stories line up with like modern science, like where we are with it all. I have not really done a deep dive into this, but I've heard people talk about this. I think Jesse Michaels, if you're familiar with his YouTube channel, there's actually science now where if you get like 100 people in a room and they do like the same crossword puzzle isolated, the 101st person, when they walk into that room to do that crossword puzzle, they actually do it faster. They actually, it's almost as if they know what the answers are, because in a way it's like I work in IT, so I'm a big computer nerd, but it's like a client-server relationship where, when you have 100 people doing the same crossword puzzle, they're almost like uploading their thoughts to this server. And then the 101st person, they're actually kind of like downloading that it speaks to like a cosmic consciousness kind of thing. And obviously we have no proof of this yet. But when I hear your story about, you kind of had these downloads and you kind of your perceptions were changing, it does make me wonder. I mean, as you know, I'm kind of on the more skeptical side, but it makes me wonder if there are extraterrestrial, extratemporal, extradimensional beings out there that maybe are, 5,000 years more advanced than us. Maybe they figured out all this stuff and they are able to say, here you go, Jennifer, here's a download for you. Here's another one. Here's another one. We're just going to keep giving Jennifer the latest updates and just keep going. And, in your perception, you're just like, I don't know what's happening, but my whole worldview is changing. But it really makes me wonder if there is something like scientific to that.
Called the crossword phenomenon.
Is that what it's called?
I'm aware of it. Yeah, it is. And I think the reason it gained traction was because they had stats. These were measured with people doing online crosswords. They found that once a crossword was published online, that the solving time of that crossword progressively got shorter and shorter the longer it had been out. So the more people that seemed to have completed the crossword, the faster the people completing it afterwards. It's also been measured, I don't know how robustly, but it has been measured across creative fields as well. I mean, you'll hear lots of interviews with creatives, musicians, artists who talk about just downloading the information and tapping into some sort of collective creativity here or collective consciousness, if you would, and they're really just pulling information out that's already there. So it is a thing, and there is research on the crossword phenomena.
Interesting.
Can't wait to research that and learn more. I could hypothesize on a lot of things that could be. It's fascinating. I think that what visited us that night, and me in particular, it came with an intent and a purpose. And I think that this has happened to an awful lot of people. And right now, it's happening to a lot globally.
If I remember correctly, tell me if this is wrong, but I think you had mentioned earlier that you researched or you found out about the quantum healing technique and you reached out to someone, but they had like a 6-month wait list. If I do the math right, if you had this experience like in, May, June kind of area, are you saying that you had your first quantum healing just in January of this year? Does that line up?
That's correct. January,
okay.
yeah. January.
And that's when, was that the recording you sent us? Was that your first one?
Yeah, that was my first one. Yeah, I want to have another, but that was my first one.
Is that the only one that you've had so far?
One. I've never been hypnotized before, but yeah, that was to date, my one and only QHHT session.
Okay. So for the listeners, Jennifer did send us the audio recording, which, are you okay if I enter in maybe some clips of that? Or is that?
I'm a totally open book. Ask me anything, use it. I've sent, yeah, that's fun.
So what you're about to hear is Jennifer's QHHT session with Patty Donahue. It was about 2 hours long, and frankly, it was pretty hard to listen to. There's a lot of crying, highly emotionally charged, and the majority of the time, Jennifer's going into past life regressions. The thing that really stuck out with me, though, just upon the initial listen and then even subsequent listens, is that it doesn't really sound like Jennifer. I know we've spoken to Steve Burgess in the past, and he kind of described the process, but listening to this audio just is very unsettling to me. I don't know what it is. So here's a quick little snippet, and let me know what you think.
Now I'm alone. I don't know what to do.
Yeah. Right.
And I fell.
And what?
I jumped off the cliff.
Tell me about that.
I jumped off the cliff.
Where's the cliff?
In the ocean.
Yep. So tell me leading up to that, what happens?
And the night passed. Uh-huh. I was so alone and it was dark.
Mm-hmm.
I couldn't be without him anymore, so I jumped.
You jumped off the cliff. Yeah.
And I was scared, but I jumped.
Yeah. And then what happened when you jumped off the cliff?
I felt the water and then everything went black.
Uh-huh. Okay, so describe what happens when you die.
So basically, a QHHT session lasts typically 4 to 6 hours. Mine was about 6.5 hours. You go in, and the only preparation that you really need to do is just have a list of questions that you want answers to. And so I had my questions in hand, and I met with the practitioner, and we talked for a good 2 or 3 hours. That in itself was so healing for me, because I was able to confide in her things that I felt like I couldn't confide in anyone before. So, the healing began before I was induced into the Theta state. She told me, I didn't know this, that the healing of a QHHT session actually begins the moment you book your appointment, because they know that you're coming.
It's the intention.
It is the intention. They know what you need, what's for your greatest and highest good. They mean God, universe, source, that part of your soul. It's always up there, heaven, if you want to call it, the other side. And I get chills thinking about it. She said, well, your healing actually started when you booked your appointment in May.
Did you happen, I'm not sure if you remember this or not, but did you book the session and then your back was healed? Or was it the vice versa?
I booked the session, heard the breathing, my back was healed.
Whoa.
And I thought about, 3 months into, the healing, I thought the only reason I booked the QHHT session was because I was out of options.
Yeah.
It's like there was nothing I can do. And I didn't know a whole lot about QHHT. Intuitively, I thought, no, this is something I need to try. There's something very real and very genuine to this. But I thought about canceling. But by this time, I had recruited myself to want to become a facilitator, a practitioner in this type of hypnosis. So I'm like, I think it's important that I keep this appointment just for the experience. And you never know what's going to come through. And maybe this can give me some ideas as to what exactly I heard.
Mm-hmm.
I want to also interject here. In November of last year, there's a girl I follow on Instagram. She's called the Energetic Alchemist. She's based out of Austin, Texas. Her name is Crystal Allen. She immediately got back to me within a day and said, I would like to gift you a session. Now, she is a channel. She's an intuitive, one of the most beautiful souls I've ever interacted with. And I'm like, wow, she wants to gift me a session. I wanted a session with her for a long time, but just, didn't have the funds to put towards that. So 3rd week of November, I had my session, and she knew nothing about me. I didn't give her any info. She really couldn't glean a whole lot if she were to try to Google me or look at my profile. I knew to expect something a little unusual, and she told me so many things. She nailed my husband to a T, my son, my oldest son, and she said, okay, do you have any questions for me? And I said, yes. I said, what was the source of the breathing that we heard? And she interrupted. She said, the Arcturians. Okay, I'm going to get emotional talking about them. They're just absolutely beautiful. So I'm sorry for the emotion. About 2 months before my session with her, we were outside one night. This is probably August. So a couple of months after the breathing, a couple of months before I met up with her, we were outside grilling, and I was sitting back looking up at the stars, and I happened to look to my left, and I noticed a very, very bright star that I hadn't seen before. It was orangish red. It wasn't Mars. It was so bright, I thought it was a planet. And I'm like, what is this? And I pulled out my star app, and I knew it before I pulled it up. I knew it was Arcturus. And sure enough, it was Arcturus. I, joking, not joking, said, hello, Arcturians. I'm like, did you heal me? If you did, thank you. And I looked over at my husband, who was at the grill, and I'm like, I think the Arcturians healed me.
I know nothing about the Arcturians at all, other than you messaging me and saying that they healed you. What is the lore? Would you mind just doing like a quick 2-minute, not lore, but you mean like the background of where they're from and like what are they, or who are they?
Right now, there are a lot of people reporting interactions with them, sightings of them. Now, I have not seen them with my physical eyes. I want to. I've never seen a spaceship. Want to, but I know they're there. But those that have had experiences with them, they're all positive. They're all good. The Arcturians are playing a major role in the current state and collective consciousness of planet Earth as planet Earth shifts into the fifth density. Some say that this is going to happen when the great solar flash occurs, which is expected anytime between now and 2030. The Arcturians in particular are playing a role in this by opening the minds of humans, by coming in, by healing them, body, mind, spirit, you name it. They're coming in with such an amazing frequency of love. I feel now, just talking about them, the love they bring is deeper and more profound than a parent, a mother, a father has for the child. It goes deeper than that. I was told by Crystal during this channeled session, she said it was the Arcturians, the blue ones. Some people who have seen them say they're 3 to 4 feet tall. When they have come to me, they're about 7 feet tall. Tall and willowy, the most beautiful energy. It's the closest thing that I've experienced to God. And Crystal told me they did heal you. She said there was a lot of, she said, how I say, dark, stagnant energy in your home, in your room, in the room that you heard their ship in. She said, and it was their ship you heard. It's an organic ship. It's alive. She said they've been coming in at night, which they do. Other positive ET and unfortunately some negative ET groups do come in at night. I remember some mornings waking up with this information in my head, realizations and things I didn't know I knew, that I didn't read anywhere. And I know that it was the Arcturians, and they're still working with me. I feel them here now. I think talking about them has called them in, which is wonderful.
Was all this in that free session that you got from? I wrote it down.
Crystal.
From Crystal.
Yeah.
That this is all in that one session is what you were learning. Wow. Okay.
As it turns out, I have a soul contract with the Arcturians, and I hope it never ends. Don't know any more about that. I'm going to find out more soon. But that is how the Arcturians came in. I have some sort of soul contract with them, and I think they are teaching me healing, which is ultimately what I want to do. I want to heal others in whatever way the universe sees fit. But she confirmed with me that it was the Arcturians we heard in the breathing. But I knew that. And she told me things I knew that I didn't have a conscious realization that I knew.
Well, did you do it in person or was it through like a Zoom session?
QHHT sessions are only to be done in person.
Okay.
Anybody listening out there who, if you find a QHHT practitioner, head over the phone or Zoom, run, don't walk. Dolores was adamant, and she'd get a little upset. Yeah, it was face to face.
And where is she? Where is she located? Did you have to travel to it? Like, if you can walk through, like, if you had to travel somewhere, even going into the building, any nerves you might have had, like, just kind of walk, even to the point where you started. Like, if you could just kind of be as detailed as possible into that, I think that would lead really good into the conversation.
You know, when I back in May of last year, when I scheduled my QHHT session, I was desperate. You know, I was reaching out for anything that might help me. And I remember when I made the session, got confirmation from her name is Patty Donahue. She's a level 3. Level 3 is the highest level it gets. She's based out of Brentwood, which is a suburb of Nashville, Tennessee. It's about 2.5 hours away from me. I'm in East Tennessee, in Knoxville. I remember when I booked the appointment, got confirmation, I got this sinking feeling in my gut, like, am I really going to do this? Am I going to go under hypnosis? And like, is this even real? Is this a thing? What's going to happen? Like, I got kind of a sick feeling. It was just fear creeping in, fear of the unknown. to help that fear that I continue to have over the next several weeks, I thought, I need to learn more about this. Started reading about Dolores, started reading books she'd written. And then I'm like, whoa, this is cool. I want to help people in this way. So I signed up to become a QHHT practitioner, did level 1 online, passed my exam. Now I'm an intern.
And this is all before your actual session. You were just so amped up about it. You were like, I'm going to sign up. I want to do this. Like, you just had this like calling to do it even before you even went through the first session.
Yeah, I knew. And, I'm a huge fan of a lady called Julie Jancis, the Angel Medium. She has a podcast and a YouTube channel, Angels and Awakening. And something she says a lot is, it's like, like you know. It's like, I knew I was healed. I knew it was the Arcturians before a channeler comes in and says, yeah, it was. And someone may say, well, Jen, how did you know? How did I know? Just know like you know. So by the time my QHHT session rolled around, I wasn't afraid. The fear was gone. And I knew that I would get answers. I think the Arcturians had a lot to do with removing that fear from me. Overstepping into this type of hypnotherapy, it's like, what the heck is this? My 3D matrix mind would sometimes try to creep in and be like, it's all rubbish. This is not real. I can't believe you're buying into this. It's a crap, whatever. So my husband and son and I drive to Nashville. I was just like really cool and chill about it. I was like, well, I've waited long enough for this. I can't wait to hear what I find out. I hope I have a good session. Let's see what happens. And so we went to Patty's house. Most QHHT practitioners, well, not most, but you're either conducting sessions from your home or you might have an office somewhere, but hers was from her home. And she has a little therapy dog, a Maltipoo named Theo. So shout out to Theo and Patty
Theo?
when she listened to this. Yeah, Theo's the greatest. Theo, so much love and calmness to the sessions. But I went in with her and she's like, okay, let's talk about you. How did your story begin? Where were you born? She prompted me for questions and, asked about my parents, my upbringing, my spirituality, religion, schooling, any children experiences that really stand out that were, turning points for me. And just speaking with her for the 2-3 hours I did was so healing. So after that is done, she's like, okay, let me look at your questions you want me to ask once you're induced into the Theta state, brainwave state.
So at this point, you're not induced into the Theta state yet. You're still fully present and just answering questions.
Yeah, we were both in recliners with our shoes off, curled up, talking like two sisters would. She didn't have to explain everything as though I were coming into this blindly. She looked at my questions, kind of reviewed them with me. Then she put a mic on me and said, okay, you know what's coming next. And she, kind of said, well, I'm going to mic you up. Here's a cotton weighted blanket. Let's stretch you out in the recliner. Theo can jump up with you, but when you go into that first past life, I usually call him down. And she began the process of induction. At first, she walks you through a pyramid of white light coming down over you to protect you. A lot of men are more left side of the brain thinkers, so they're a little more challenging to induce than others. But basically, just imagine these things in your mind. Are you there? Do you imagine them? Yes. Okay, now let's bring down the protective pyramid of white light. Nothing can harm you. You are safe. It's above you, around you, underneath you. And then look up a cloud. And we're going to put you up on that cloud. And she talks about the cloud. And then she asks how you feel on the cloud. She said, you can't fall. You're safe. You're looking down. And she begins the induction, and at this point, I felt myself relaxing and, visualizing being on this cloud and floating throughout the land, over valleys. But then she brought the cloud down and I stepped off the cloud. And at that point, she, the practitioner will say, "What do you see?" And I saw some things I didn't know I had seen before and experienced before. And I went into the first of 3-4 past lives. Interestingly, Crystal, in her session in November, she told me, "This is your 3rd or 4th incarnation on Earth. A lot of people have had hundreds or thousands." She said, "But you have had thousands of other incarnations, but they are all galactic." And I kind of always knew that too. Just one of those things, I already knew it, but thanks for helping me to realize it.
The only frame of reference I have with, like, I guess hypnosis or what you're describing is like mindfulness meditation. I have tried that. I struggle with anxiety my whole life, and mindfulness has really been a helpful thing to me. But when you're describing being put into this state and visualizing everything, and then the white light and the cloud and all these things, and then, okay, what do you see? I always had this block that I can't understand what that is. But as you're talking about it, it makes me feel like when I meditate, one of the strategies I use is you picture yourself sitting on the side of a river, and your thoughts that just enter your brain are just like thoughts going down the river. Just like watch them pass. Don't hold on to any of them.
Okay.
Is it kind of like that, where you're in this state and all of a sudden your mind just you start seeing things, or you start experiencing something, almost like a stream of consciousness where you're not trying to do anything, but you start seeing these things? Is that it?
That's accurate. That was my, from my perspective and experience, that's how it was. You start to, to visualize these things. And when we wake up in the morning, we're in the beta brainwave state. We're awake like we are now. The minute you sit down in front of your phone, computer, TV, within 60 seconds, your brain transitions to the alpha state, which is what most traditional hypnotists induce their patients into. But Dolores found that that's not where the good stuff comes from. It's getting the patient to the next brainwave, the theta state, that activates that right side of the brain, and that opens you up to a lot of things. Past lives, your higher self, knowledge you didn't know you had. As you're in a QHHT session, once you get up on the cloud and you're there, you're floating along, you're progressively going in, transitioning from alpha to theta. She brings the cloud down. I step off the cloud, and she's like, "What do you see? What are you wearing? Look down at your shoes." And, listening to my recording, the 3 or 4 past lives that I went into, they each, your higher self comes in and speaks through you. These incarnations you've had come to life. Your voice box is used by your higher self. And each of these incarnations that you hear on the recording, the personality is different. Some speech patterns, speech rhythm is different. Even words. In one life I went into, I was the daughter of a chieftain in Scotland. And the words that this incarnation was using are not words that I normally use, and I didn't use them in the others. But my first incarnation was as a young Irish girl in County Galway.
You know what's funny? I listened to the beginning of that one, because I think that might have been the first one that you go into. And now that I'm thinking about it, I don't even know if I detected, you have like a little bit of a Southern accent, obviously from Tennessee. I don't think I detected that in the recording. Maybe I'm wrong. I have to go back and listen to it now, but you clearly have a Southern accent talking now, but I don't know if I heard it or detected it, at least as not as strong in the recording. I don't know. Anyway, I'm sorry. I just realized that.
Oh, no. No, you're right, because I hadn't realized that. But you're right. She didn't have, none of them had this East Tennessee accent.
Yeah.
Josh, somebody from India thought I was from Australia. I'm like, "Thank you, but no, this is an East Tennessee accent." But yeah, the first life was just talking about it makes me so emotional. I have a hard time listening to it. I don't like to.
It is intense. It's very intense.
All of the physical problems, mental, emotional, problems we have in this life are due to something that happened in past life, due to trauma. The way to heal by means of QHHT is your higher self knows which incarnations to guide you into to get to the source of the trauma, which heals you. I found out that the source of my back and leg pain and this inexplicable, terrified fear of heights that I get, even standing up on a ladder, looking down, watching my son play Minecraft, and he's way up there in the clouds. Just visually looking at that, I get nauseous, start to ache. I break out into a sweat. It's a phobia, of awful fear. And to find out, my leg pain, my fear of heights was because as a young girl during the famine, which Irish famine happened in the 1840s, the worst year, 1847, was called Black 47. It was horrible. My family died of starvation. My neighbors in my village died of starvation. The English army came through, and those that weren't dead, they were murdered. I mean, they did atrocious, just horrible, horrible atrocities to the native Irish during that time. And I had no other recourse or option. And out of this despair at losing my family and everything, I jumped off a cliff.
This is crazy. Josh?
Does this remind you of some of what Steve was talking about a few weeks ago?
Yep. This is so... Jennifer, I apologize to interrupt again, but Josh is a great example. We're pulling at these threads, that these common denominators, and it's interesting because there are these people that we talk to, they don't know each other. You guys are all isolated. There's not a way you guys can collude and say, we're going to trick this podcaster and make him believe in these crazy made up things. That's impossible. That's not a possibility. And we just spoke to this regression therapist by the name of Steve Burgess. I'm not sure if you're familiar of his work or not, but he's he's hypnotized thousands of people. And
yeah, it's been going for about 30 years, about 15,000 hypnoregressive sessions. He's one of the leading hypnoregressive therapists in the world.
And a lot of the things that he was saying, I'll be honest, at the time I was like, okay, like I as a somewhat of a skeptic, I have to kind of digest this a little bit and process this, and let me see how I think about this. But everything you just said, he said he's seen 1,000 times where someone has some sort of physical issue or mental health issue or some sort of thing that they're dealing with. Migraines is another one he mentioned too, where someone got hit over the head with a shovel, I think, or some sort of blunt object. And this child had migraines, and then no one could figure it out. And he went to go see Steve. Steve put him under the hypnosis, and he talked about a past life where he was murdered, I think, several times in the head with head injuries. And after that session, no more headaches. And hearing you talk about this is just like, it's kind of blown my mind a little bit, because I'm just like, this is exactly what Steve was talking about. It's
what he was talking about.
Pretty wild.
Yeah, it is, and it's profound. And in my initial email to Patty, the QHHT practitioner, I said, okay, I have this pain. Modern medicine can't do a thing about it. Nothing's helping. I need to know where this pain is originating from. And looking back, when I emailed that to her, I believed it, but I believed that I was experiencing this physical pain due to something that happened in the past, but I didn't believe it. I was on the fence, because luckily I've been able to, I can see things from a skeptic's point of view, and I've been there before, different topics. Like even 6 months ago, 9 months ago, if someone had said, you're going to be talking about how these blue beings from Arcturus came and healed you, I'd be like, yeah, okay. Yeah, right. Whatever. Not me. I believe in some things that are hard for some to, but
I think it's healthy. I do think it's healthy to bring a skeptic mindset to it. But in my mind, there's two skeptics. There's someone that is kind of like, for lack of a better phrase, like thick-headed, and just, there's no way that that's true. I'm a materialist. everything that we know from science is true, and there's nothing more. Like that's what it is, and that's one skeptic. And then there's the other skeptic that's like almost like hopeful that there's something more, like almost agnostic, but like I don't want to just believe in something that is not real. I guess there's almost like a fear of that, and there's like I want to believe, but I need to have not proof, but I want to be able to find whatever science there is for that, and be able to bring those two together. To I think that's going to really where my skepticism is going to fade away when those science and experiences that people have kind of merge. I think that's why I started this podcast. I think that's a very healthy, in my mind, well, because it's me, but you tell me. I think it's a healthy mindset to have, because I think believing just with no regards to what is real, I think could be damaging. I think in some regard. And also, I think being extremely skeptical and not open to things is also it's not very helpful. So I think the middle of the Venn diagram, I think, is probably the healthiest place to be, where you're skeptical, hopeful, and trying to figure out the truth of all this, and like where the science can come in and actually like validate some of these things. I think is because it has already, like with just quantum mechanics, has already kind of at least cracked the door open a little bit on some of these topics. So anyway.
That's exactly how I feel. The cognitive dissonance has been popping up a lot from different sources with me lately. And the first type of skeptic that you spoke of, I think, is one with cognitive dissonance. It's like, I'm married to one, so I have firsthand account with this.
I think I might be too, if I'm being honest. Love you, babe.
It's like, it's outside what I was taught to believe. So therefore, I reject it.
Yeah. I think they might not be able to handle it, or they might have trouble believing it or thinking in this way. So their their left side brain, to use your terminology, is just like, I'm just going to shut it down because I just can't deal with it. I'm going to put it in a little box, in a little container, and put it in the side of the room and just not think about it. And I'm worried about them because I think there is a shift that's happening. I think everyone feels it, including myself. Don't know what the end result is going to be, but there is definitely, call it disclosure of all things, I guess is a way to say it. That is definitely happening. And I'm a little bit worried for myself, and I'm in that middle of that Venn diagram. I'm skeptic, but I'm hopeful. The people that are on the other side, that they're materialists, they have cognitive dissonance, like you said. What's going to happen when you have a president or whatever, government leaders come out being like, all these things are real? They're not gonna know how to handle it. They're gonna be completely unprepared, and I'm very concerned about those individuals. I hope it all works out for them.
Well, the fact that you personally have this podcast, like this is part of your soul plan, your life's purpose. You're awakening just by having this podcast, by bringing in guests who have had these experiences. So you don't have anything to be worried about. For people like my family members, those who are shut down, don't believe, what's going to happen is they're going to just reincarnate back into another. When they pass from this one, because they didn't learn the lessons in this lifetime they were supposed to learn. I don't want to, Dolores Cannon, she spoke of the wheel of karma a lot. It's like, if you don't learn the lessons you're supposed to learn, you get reborn into another body, another family. You do choose it. It's part of your soul contract. You choose where to go, and you choose who to go there with. But, who wants to reincarnate back to planet Earth? It's like, be as open as you can. Now, that being said, I tried so hard to get my husband to wake up. I tried to get my parents to wake up. So for those of you out there who are awake and trying to get loved ones, friends, family to wake up, I had to learn the hard way. You can send them, as many links and posts as you can. You can talk to them, send them video. Some people just are not going to wake up. No matter what you do, you can't wake them up. Now, you can plant a seed, which is great, and it's like Patty told me during the session. She's like, Jen, some people just aren't going to wake up in this lifetime. And who knows how many more it may take before they do. But, about disclosure, you mentioned all the government leaders know that the ETs, negative and positive, have been here for a long, long time and are here. And the way I see it, it's like a slow IV drip, a slow trickle. Slowly, the governments around the world are sending out, giving us information so that when the time comes that it's all coming out, it's not going to be as big a shock to everybody. But I worry about some people when it happens, and it's supposed, full disclosure, first contact is supposed to happen. Most people say by 2030. I think it's going to be 26, 27.
I firmly believe that it's quantum computing and AI. I studied that. I took a class on it over the summer. Had a great teacher. I'm trying to get him on the podcast, actually, or professor rather. But I believe that when those two things merge, I think the government knows it too. I think they know, like you said, I do think that they know way more than what they're saying. And I think they realize that, holy shit, when quantum computing and AI merge, it's going to be out there. Like, it's almost like there's like a clock that's like counting down. We don't quite know when that end date's going to be, but probably within the next 5 years, I'd imagine. And they're just like, how are we going to do this? And I agree that they're slowly trickling it out to people because they know it's inevitable. Like, once we have those two things, we're going to know what consciousness is in great detail. Maybe we'll discover this cosmic consciousness, like all these things that are theoretical now. Josh, I'll bring up the telepathy tapes. like that. Like, that's a great. We have a joke because we bring it up like every single podcast. That telepathy. But I think all these things are gonna be confirmed through quantum mechanics and quantum computing and AI. And I think that is the tipping point. That is the disclosure that I think is going to happen. And I think it's just inevitable at this point. I really do.
It's all tied together, and it's amazing. And it's amazing that we're here experiencing this, knowing what's going on. It's a great time to be alive. It really is. If we were to be given all this knowledge and understanding at once, we'd short circuit. When you're a baby and you're an infant, you don't give an infant a steak because they can't process that steak. So what do? You give it to them in tiny bites and tiny little spoonfuls. We're being spoon-fed. And, this time, a year ago, I don't even think I knew what QHHT was. If someone were to tell me 12 months ago, I would have been like, yeah, whatever. But I went through that too, where I'm like, I want to believe in past lives, but I can't. My mind can't make that shift into understanding. But it's all for a plan. It's all for a reason. We're given only what we need to know when we're given it. Had I known everything that I've come to a realization of now, had I known it 3 years ago, it's like, what? Come on. But I've been spoon-fed little bits and little bites. But it's okay not being ready to come to a realization or understanding of something. That's part of the journey, part of the process. And that's a beautiful part.
I think I already know what you're going to say. Occam's razor is that Jennifer just had some sort of spiritual awakening that reduced stress, which therefore reduced inflammation, which therefore alleviated the pain on the nerve, so on and so forth. How close am I?
You're pretty spot on. That's a logical and straightforward interpretation of what might have happened. It's definitely plausible that a profound transformative experience could lead to a reduction in stress and inflammation, ultimately relieving nerve pain. That doesn't necessarily mean the experience was any less real or meaningful. It just gives it a more scientific framing. But of course, the beauty of Jennifer's story is that it leaves room for all kinds of interpretations, and that's what makes it so compelling.
Sure. And we are seeing things in our skies that we can't explain with these UAP sightings and things like that, obviously. That doesn't necessarily mean that they're coming here and performing miracles. But if we were to set up an experiment to try to prove Jennifer's claims and what she believes, that there is an extraterrestrial race that's coming here and healing people, how do we even start with something like that?
That's a fascinating challenge, and it would definitely require some creative thinking. One approach might be to start with gathering and analyzing a larger set of similar cases, people who report spontaneous healing following unusual experiences by looking for patterns like common elements in their experiences, similarities in medical histories, or even physiological changes that can be measured. We might find clues that point us in a direction. Additionally, we could consider working with experts in fields like neurology, psychology, and even quantum biology to explore whether there are mechanisms we don't yet fully understand that could explain these phenomena. Ultimately, the key would be to approach it with an open mind and a rigorous scientific method, focusing on evidence while respecting the mystery of the experience.
Yeah, I think it's a good place to start. Obviously, there's no way to prove Jennifer's story right now, but definitely an interesting one. And I hope everyone enjoyed it.
I think Jennifer's story is both captivating and thought-provoking. It taps into that sense of wonder and curiosity about the unknown and the potential of the human mind and body. Over the next decade, as science continues to advance, we might see breakthroughs in areas like neuroplasticity, the gut-brain connection, or the role of consciousness in physical health that could provide some explanations for stories like hers. Maybe we'll gain a deeper understanding of how certain experiences can trigger profound healing responses in the body, or perhaps we'll discover new dimensions of consciousness and energy that we're only beginning to explore. It's exciting to think about what might be uncovered and how today's mysteries could become tomorrow's science.
And maybe we'll find out that Arcturians are coming to Earth and healing people.
Who knows, right? It's always fun to keep an open mind to the possibilities, whether it's Arcturians, some other advanced beings, or simply the incredible untapped potential of human consciousness. It's the curiosity and exploration that makes these stories so compelling, and who knows what discoveries lie ahead. It's definitely an exciting journey and one that keeps us all guessing.
This was a wild one. So many complex elements that were all layered together, from Jennifer's medical records to the QHHT sessions, which, by the way, I had no idea what that was before speaking to Jennifer, to starseeds, to Arcturians, to the strange parallels to Clark's story. And I'm not gonna lie, this one took a long time to edit. So if you're into this kind of work, do me a favor and spam the comments, leave a 5-star review, and hit subscribe so we can keep this thing going. And what did you think of Jennifer's story? Did I ask the right questions? What about Scully? Did we miss anything? Let us know. Because truthfully, I don't care about my feelings. All I care about is the truth. And I want some critique to my work. After all, this is a club, right? We're all truth seekers. We're all trying to get close to the truth. And I want to make sure that I'm doing it justice. So give me some feedback. I'm looking for it. This podcast was created and edited by me, Justin Gearhart, produced by Josh Barretto, and mixed and mastered by Brett Jarvis. Thank you so much for staying to the very end here. We really do appreciate it. And you've been listening to the Close Encounter Club. See you soon.